Welcome to this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have with us Marit Welker, a coach, speaker, and a mom who whose adult child walked away. And we'll learn about her, about her grief, how one in four families faces this grief, what mothers can do while they wait, and how the deepest pain can become the most powerful purpose. Welcome to the show, Marit.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
You are welcome. Welcome to the show, Marit. Welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk right now. We'll talk about estrangement, we'll talk about faith, and we'll talk about healing. And we'll talk about it. But before that, let's understand a bit about your journey, your background, your story, so that the audience knows who they are listening to.
Well, I'm a mother, as you said, whose son walked away. And I did the same thing to my own mother many years earlier. It wasn't something I intentionally did. I didn't walk away, but I turned my back on her emotionally and I blamed her for all of my pain and just would not forgive her for 30 years. And we have reconciled. And then my son did this to me. And as I was considering what had happened with my son, I realized what I had done to my mother. And now we have since grown even closer. My son and I are happily reconciled, but the day he left, I lost 5 family members, including my 3 beautiful grandchildren. And that was excruciating. They had lived with us, and so I knew them well. And it was just, it tore me apart. But I had learned through other experiences earlier in my life how to find peace and how to find joy and how to find happiness no matter what your circumstances are. And those lessons I learned earlier saw me through. And then I made all the mistakes that a mom makes when her child wants to leave. And it was not a pretty sight. But eventually my son turned around and came back because he's a loving person, and we have reconciled and our relationship is now great.
Absolutely, absolutely, Marit. So, to understand it better, you teach Christian moms who have been cut off by a child how to successfully prepare for a return. And the numbers, if I understand it, one in four families, these numbers are, I guess, more from the US, that part of the world. And in other parts of the world, for whatever reasons, many a times estrangement is also one of the reasons. What
Well,
is
it's
it
not
that you are trying to tell the world with what you are doing and say?
it is 1 in 4 individuals is cut off from a family member in the United States. And what I'm trying to tell the world is that, well, I would say 3 things. First of all, this isn't a solution. This isn't going to fix your happiness walking away. And second of all, this is a trend that is damaging society to an incredible degree and destroying families. Everyone needs to know where they're from and connect with that. Everyone needs to have a supportive family. We don't all get that. But for those of us that could have it, if we did the work, it's worth it. It's worth all the work, even as comfortable or painful as it might be. And then the third thing I want to teach is what to do so that if your child returns, and most of them do, if your child returns, instead of having them leave again, you are ready. You are not the same mother that you were when they left. And we do that using harnessing neuroscience and personal development, and of course, our faith in order to uh, make calculated decisions that will prepare us to become the kind of mother that child is going to need. And the best part is that that teaches us how to be happy while we wait, even if it's the rest of our lives. I teach women how to thrive in this difficulty.
Absolutely, Marit. So help us understand why this is happening. Isn't it natural that children who will grow up, they will start looking at the world in their own eyes, in their own ways? Nowadays there is
Absolutely.
so much of interaction with the outside world. You have got the phones in your hand, you have got your own group, online, offline. Your connections are in your head. They tell you much more about you rather than your own parents. Earlier they used to
Yes.
call the generation gap. Isn't it obvious that it will impact? And in the US also, people generally are a bit more individualistic. At 18 or
Hmm.
later, they go out and lead their independent life. Why do you call it estrangement? People
I, I,
are individual. Help us understand that.
I'm not talking about that. Everybody needs to go out and live their own life. And I also believe that uh, building boundaries about what's okay and what's not okay is an important part of a healthy relationship. What I'm talking about is when a child says, "You will never speak to me again," or doesn't even say that, which is happening more and more. When a child walks away and disappears and the parent doesn't know they're gone, they don't know what's going on, and they've moved across the country and gotten a new job elsewhere, and they never hear from their child again. And that is happening quite frequently now. Um, and it's being pushed by prominent voices in the United States who are influencers, and I won't go into detail on that, but I'm very anti what their message is. You hear catchphrases on social media that say things like, uh, lose your parents, find your life. And people are big proponents of going no contact with their parents. Another trend that's happening is that this is increasingly coming from people going to a new therapist. They go to someone in the mental health field, and without knowing the parents or knowing the situation, they decide that their parental relationship is causing them pain. And so they advise the person to go no contact. And they tell them that it's abuse, which is not always the case. Yes, there is absolutely cause for doing this in cases of, abuse and danger. But I'm talking about discomfort, not danger. Another reason that this has increased is because there's such a uh, polarized political situation in our country. And there's also a human sexuality, and there's many people who believe that because they're LGBT, they are going to be rejected by their parents. And that may be true in some cases. It may not in others. But there's as many people who leave their parents because they are um, because of their politics, as there are children leaving because of their sexuality. Additionally, and in addition to all of this social media influence and the social influence and the therapists and this, people are being told by friends to leave, and relationships, and a new spouse or girlfriend comes along, and you have to pick me or your family because I'm not doing this. And suddenly they never speak to their family again. And so, yeah, it's a trend with many different prongs to it. And I think the saddest prong is those who have decided that their family relationship brings them discomfort, mild pain, and so they give up on it and walk away. And then they lose out on all the blessings that would come to them later in life through a lumpy, bumpy relationship with an imperfect human. But they don't know that because they don't stick around. So this isn't about going out and living your own life. This is about going out, living your own life and rejecting everything you came from and the people and never speaking to them again.
Absolutely, Marit. I get it. That's why I wanted to understand it from both those angles. Sometimes, as you said, the impact of the outside world, and a lot of people who are supposed to be your friends or therapist or whoever it is, that is also, in and some cases, it can lead to that. But your world was different. Let me understand it better through your story. When you decided that with your own mom at that point in time, it was a different world altogether. This was
Oh, yes.
not the case then. How did it happen with you? Whatever you can share, that you are comfortable with. Why? And was it because of perspective? How did you see it? And how did your mom see it? What she confused? What she did she get a chance to explain? Did you ask questions? And then,
Well,
in the case with your
certainly.
own son, how did that play out? Did you feel again that you know the reason? Did your son tell you? I want to, and then the reconciliation
Oh,
part to lead such a great happy life.
that is something that is another big trend is most of the time, maybe not most, half of the time, the child does not explain why they're leaving. They can't put it into words, or they choose not to explain anything at all. And so these mothers don't have a clue what's going on. And it's a major generation gap issue because what was abusive in my parents' day was extreme, jail time. What was abusive in my day as a parent was, you know, spanking out of anger. What is abusive today is you made me feel uncomfortable. The concepts of trauma language have become casual. And the concepts in becoming casual, um, the meaning has expanded. Instead of it means your life is in danger, that is when it's abuse, okay? Or you are in danger emotionally and mentally. It's not danger. It's now about um, I was uncomfortable with the circumstance. I was feeling pain. Well, feeling pain and feeling pain are different. Um, and and then there's the actual danger, which is another level entirely. That's something that has really impacted things because what was abusive to me was Tuesday afternoon for my mom. She just grew up in a different world. Now, was my mom abusive? No, she was not. She she has one personality type and I have a very, very opposite personality type. And that's not something I could understand when I was 18 and 20 years old. And I wanted uh Miss Warm and Cuddly to tell me everything was gonna be okay, not someone to remind me to stand up straight and stop talking so much. But, I I felt I felt unappreciated. But here's the secret that I teach the women I work with, is that your feelings, every last one of them, comes from inside of you, every single one. And those feelings, no one can make you angry. No one can make you sad. And those feelings, they come based on our expectation and what our brain is looking for. So I teach women how to do something really exciting called metacognition, which is thinking about your thinking while you're doing it. And metacognition is my favorite element of neuroscience. When you experience a feeling, if you name it, it reduces its impact. For instance, if I say I'm scared in a moment that I'm scared, say it out loud, suddenly that scared drops quite a bunch in its power over you. And whatever feeling you're feeling, if you can name it and sort out what it is, that makes you as strong or stronger than the feeling. Then what happens with this metacognition is that you are thinking about your thoughts as they're happening, and then you are moving them around and switching them around to get right to where you directing them to be where you want them to be. Well, in my case with my mother, I'm not sure if she did anything wrong, but I blamed her. And in my case, I felt great pain and I held it against her. And that became more of a trying to punish her. And all I was doing was punishing me. she knew what she had done and what she hadn't, and she was okay with it and moved forward. And I didn't cut her off physically. I still saw her once a year, once every other year. Talked to her on the phone once or twice a year. And I used her services as often as she was willing to help me. If I had a baby, she would come and take care of my kids for a couple of weeks. But I was not kind, and I was very distant, and I had nightmares about her into my 40s. I would do anything to get those 20-something years back. I would do anything to be able to have my mom in my life those years. She's getting older, and we are in a great place with our relationship. But I sure don't want to look back with any regret when she's gone. And then with my son, when he left, he gave me a general reason why, and he left, and that's about as much as we talk about it. But I can tell you, we just, for his privacy, we don't talk about it. But we got back together, and I will tell you this, that the day he left, I just wanted to, I'll tell you the story. A few days later, at first I was just angry, but a few days later it began to hit me, and I saw a little toy left behind by my grandson. It was a favorite toy, and I collapsed to the floor weeping uncontrollably. And I just laid there and I said, God, I can't do this. I can't do this, which isn't true, but I sure didn't want to do this. And I prayed and I said, will you carry this pain for me? And from that point forward, I literally had a miracle. I literally felt no pain. Not seeing my grandkids again, possibly forever in this life. Okay. It was a fact, just like, what are we having for dinner? Oh, and today's the 25th. It just wasn't a pain point. It was just a fact. Although I guess it's the 26th where you are. But what happened was I was able to move forward without carrying that heavy pain with me. And I was able to function. And because of that, I was able to find my way through and learn the steps I needed to change me, because I knew I couldn't change him. Years before, I had been stuck in bed, bedridden for almost 18 months. And during that time, I had said, well, we'd gone through a financial crisis a couple years earlier and lost everything. And I had said, God, I'm going to be patient. And I was. I got through it and I was patient. 5 years later, here I am stuck in bed, and the business I had lovingly built was gone, and I couldn't do anything. I had no strength. And as I lay there, I felt that I was in for a big one here, and that I should also decide not just be patient, but like some people I'd read about, that this time I was going to be patient and cheerful. And so I vowed then I was going to be patient and cheerful. And with that commitment, my brain found the way. Excuse me. I didn't know if I was going to live. I didn't know if I was going to die, but I knew that I could be content no matter the circumstances if I looked to God. And I was able to live in gratitude for the rest of that 16 months. And as I lay in bed, it was the happiest time of my life. I couldn't do anything. My business was gone. My family was living their lives and I wasn't a part of it, but I was content. And that miracle translated through to this time with my son gone, where I was able to focus on the good, learn from the experience, and I knew what I was capable of because I had done it before. And so it was really exciting to just learn to be stronger, more emotionally stable, to give my son more space in his life, and to be the kind of mother he needed. Because when that door cracks open, the question is he going to find the same mother or that he left, or is he going to find someone new? And my son found someone new, and we were able to work things out and have gotten along great since then. And it was wonderful, wonderful to sit and watch the children play that first day back. And things were awkward between us, but the children didn't feel it. And to watch my little grandson run over to the fridge to start getting his food, and mommy and daddy are, ah, no, you're not guests. This is still your home. And yeah, it was such a glorious thing to be family again. I want that for everyone I can help, and I want to help cut the tide and turn the tide in this trend.
Absolutely. So, who would you want, not in that sense blame, but put this whole onus on? Is it the market, which is, which has entered into much more of relationships, where, personal relationships are not decided by the two people, three people, but outsiders, outside market, because it's a big market, out there.
I understand.
Lot of words like you are judging me means I never heard about all these things well growing, and this was all for the courtroom. But individually I see people talking, and also you get using it, that don't judge me. I don't know what it all means in my personal relationships, but why is it like this? Should we still call it generation gap, or is it that much more there is a concerted effort by certain groups who have vested interest, and the young and the earlier generation, the moms and all those things, they are not able to understand it from that point of view. Does the fight have to start from there, rather than just working on the ground and trying to mend broken relationships?
Well, the desire has to be there to mend it. And when I say that it's a generation thing, it's also a generation thing because I was raising my children in the 90s, and we were told to tell our children how special they were and how important they were and that they could do anything. Well, that's hogwash. Nobody can do anything. I'm sorry. I'm not going to be an NBA player. It's just not going to happen. And so when we look at, sure, we have phenomenal potential, but that doesn't mean anything. And so I think this whole generation has grown up feeling like, to some degree, that they might have been betrayed a little bit and that they are failures, because that's what's going through their head is they can do anything and they're special. And if they are just living an ordinary life, then that means that they are a failure, which isn't true. And I think that impacts it as much as the generations, because they were raised differently than the way I was raised. Also, I do think there's a strong influence from the outside. I don't believe that's the only influence, but I do know that a large, large proportion of those that have been estranged from their parents, who've gone no contact with their parents, a lot of them have been told recently by a therapist or a professional that they need to do that and that it will make their life better. And it does for the short term, but it doesn't give them a full life.
Absolutely. So, how do you start, approaching this issue as a parent as well as a adult child? Ego is there, I guess, maybe, more or less from each side, and
Right,
discomfort is there also. How to, and especially for the younger people, there are more other people around you who might again still be asking you, as you said about therapists, that there, if you look at it, a lot of things might look to be toxic for some people, if I may use
right,
that word.
right. Hmm.
A lot of times nowadays they use narcissism for parents
Hmm.
also, that whole thing, generational sort of a thing, inner child, healing your inner child. A lot of people are
Right.
going towards their childhood to find the reasons of what they are facing today. which may be right, which may be wrong. Only the qualified people will be able to say. But how do one approach this without looking needy, but actually from the,
Okay.
from the emotional point of view?
Well, fabulous question. And I would just like to start off by saying that looking backwards to change your life isn't always the best way to go. That's Freudian psychology. But Adler and Frankl had a different version. The world accepted Freudian psychology, but our present is not built on our past. Our present is built on who we decide to be in the present as much as what's happened in the past. That's why two children can grow up in the same home, and one can grow up bitter and hard, and the other can grow up grateful and cheerful. It's just how they receive it and what they are looking for. Now, I start my students, first of all, with, because I work with Christian women, we work with everything according to the Bible, but I use personal growth and neuroscience to help them understand. The brain, for instance, is designed to protect the individual. That is its purpose. And part of protecting it is to conserve energy. So, because of that, it's looking for problems. That's what it naturally does, is look for problems. Now, if we continue to live that way, then we are going to find problems. But we can turn that tide. We can choose to look for other things, like I did in bed that day when I started to look at my past with gratitude. And I've lived an incredible life, but I hadn't taken time to add up all the amazing things I'd done. I mean, I've traveled the globe and been able to do things that just mind-boggling to what my high school senior 18-year-old self would have dreamed of doing. And I'm so grateful for all of it. But here's the thing that I start off with my students, and especially with the moms, and the young people, but especially the moms, is that there are two sides to every story, and your child is suffering a great deal. And they believe that their only solution is to walk away. Now, that kind of pain doesn't come on suddenly. That kind of pain builds up over time, and there is a reason for it. And so learning to understand what's going on in your child, what's going on in their experience, will be an important part of this growth. But you can't touch your child and you can't impact your parent. What you need to do is fix yourself. And then we use faith and 5 godly habits each day to work on to help them become that person. And those habits include prayer, reading the Bible daily, and then we also move on to having a journal. And in our journal, we record 3 things each day. One is God's dealings with us that day. We record 3 positive things that we're grateful for that day. It doesn't have to be positive, actually. It just needs to be 3 things we're grateful for. And the third one is 3 victories we've had over darkness, 3 victories we've had over evil or over ourself, our natural desires, letting our spirit overcome our bodily desires. And when we record all of that, it doesn't make a big difference. But over time, it builds up and it trains our mind to look for the good. It trains our mind to look for the victories, and it trains our mind to look for the hand of God in our lives. Then we're going throughout the day with a happier outlook, with a better outlook, and feeling better about ourselves. And then we add to that instruction of loving themselves and knowing who they are, and then surrendering to God's will and to the universe, if for those who are not Christian, and trusting that things are going to be okay. And in that trust, letting it go and just truly letting it go. And then from there, we live the 3 skills of happiness, which are service, living in gratitude, and living in rejoicing. And for rejoicing, for us as Christians, it's that what Jesus Christ has done for all of us allows us to repent, to to be forgiven, to forgive others, and to be healed and go forward a new person. And so we live with that perspective in front of our eyes. That's our lens. And through that, suddenly everything else in the world hurts a lot less because what we're looking at is so important. And then the next step that we go to is moving forward and changing our circumstances. That's where we learn. Well, we've already learned how to understand our child better. But at that point, that's when we learn the communication skills to not engage if they attack us verbally, to not say the wrong thing. And most of all, and this is really important for the parents, if your child takes off, I have one phrase for you: wait. In the Bible, there's a story about a man whose son was called the prodigal son. He was the rebel, and he received his inheritance early after bothering his father for a long time to do so. And as a young man, he went off and spent all his money and spent it with his friends. And then he ended up with no money and no friends. And he realized, he came to himself, and he realized that even the pigs at his father's farm ate better than he did because a drought was in the land. So he went back to his father's land and returned and asked if he could be a servant there. And his father could have sent servants after him to go get him and bring him home. He could have denied him what he wanted, but no, he let him go. And then he waited. And when his son was ready to come back, he was watching, and he recognized his son from far away and ran to meet him. And then he had a big feast and dressed his son up well. And it was a beautiful story. And I believe that as Christians, we are estranged from God in the sense that we sin and we die. And so that keeps us from being with him forever. But through Jesus Christ, we can overcome both of those things. He overcame both of those things, and that we can return to God. What's interesting, though, is that we have to recognize our role is not to fix things. Jesus did that. Our role is to wait and prepare. And if we say anything, it will be misconstrued, it will be misinterpreted, and it will be taken the wrong way as evidence for whatever we did wrong. Sometimes we didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes it's perceived problems. Most of the time there's a problem, even if it's little, or a problem that in your mind isn't bad because it wasn't when you were a kid, but to our child is everything. It might be that moment when they were 16 and they really, really needed to talk to you, but it was 1 a.m. and you were exhausted and you told them, no, we'll talk tomorrow. And that stuck in their memory and in their heart that you weren't there for them. And then that's what they looked for. So everything going forward, if you weren't there for them at the time in the spot where they wanted, suddenly became evidence to that. And so something grew out of that. That doesn't mean it's not real. And it doesn't mean their pain isn't real. It's just something you don't know anything about. So nobody's perfect. These things can be worked through in most circumstances. And yeah, that's my message. Healing begins when you successfully reconcile and start to build a new relationship.
Absolutely, absolutely. Building a new relationship. There is so much to learn about all this, Marit, and I'm sure a lot of people, a lot of moms would like to connect with you, learn more about all these things. What's the best way for them to do so?
Well, I would say I have my own podcast. It's called Still Here with Marit Welker. It's new. And then I can be found at maritwelker.com or on social media, Marit Welker speaker and coach.
Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
You're welcome. It was my pleasure.